Hi, I'm Tyler Voss, and for my presentation, I was going to talk about censorship challenges. My thesis for my project is the significance of censorship challenges, the cultural exchange between East Asia and the United States in historical or contemporary times. So when I thought of talking about censorship, I thought it'd be a good idea for the audience to really know what censorship means. So when I first started doing my own research, I looked up the definition of censorship, and this is the definition I found. It is when the suppression of words, images, or ideas that are, quote, offensive happens whenever some people succeed in imposing their personal, political, or moral values on each other. Then I thought this picture really tied in well with this because this is a censored newspaper, and you can tell by all the redacted, and it even says right here, the truth about redacted. So that's a great way to show how things can be censored. So after knowing just basic understanding of censored, I thought it'd be good to go back in time and see when censorship was really first seen in East China. Censorship can be found early during the Qin and Han dynasties, as they had censorers, and the censorer's main job during the time was to criticize the emperor's act. But as the imperial office gained prestige, the censorate became mainly an instrument for the imperial control of the government, investigating acts of official corruption and misgovernment for the emperor. These roles continue to evolve over time. By the Tang Dynasty, the censorer was a major part of the government, and they had roles, for instance, of checking important documents, supervise construction projects, review judicial proceedings, kept watch over state property, and maintained a general lookout for cases for subversion and corruption. This was all going on, and then it all came to an end as soon as the Qin dynasty was overthrown in 1911. Here are some popular media sources that we know in the United States. And during some time in China's government now, Wikipedia is, quote, black out. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and then some Google services are even blacked out. I use the term blacked out because of the first example of the Tiananmen Square massacre. For instance, when that anniversary came around June 4th, all of those services I just previously mentioned were blacked out, which basically means you can't, when you go on it, you won't find anything. It's just, they won't let you look on it. It's like when your parents lock you out on your phone, you can't do anything. You can't go on the source, you can't go on the site or YouTube, for instance, and you won't be able to see anything. Then the next example I have here of censored information is about the liberal Guangdong magazine known as Southern Weekly. This example talks about how the government censors rewrote the paper's New Year's message from a call for reform to a tribute to the Communist Party. And this just really got under people's skins because they had nothing to do about it. They had to give it to the censors to make sure it's okay to publish. And the next thing you know, when they publish, they completely rewrote it. And then my last bullet point I have down here is the 2008 earthquake in Sichuan province. And this one I thought they really censored because a journalist named Tan Zuren was sentenced to 5 years in prison for drawing attention to government corruption and poor construction of the school building that collapsed, which is shown in this picture right here, and killed thousands of children because of this earthquake. After seeing that information while doing my research, I started to wonder to myself if there was any censorship with that involves sports, because I am a big sports guy. And then when I was doing my research, I found this good example with Daryl Morey, which is this gentleman right here. He was the general manager for the Houston Rockets. And on Twitter, he put a tweet out that said, "Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong." And obviously, as you guys could probably expect, China was not happy with that. China responded very fast and furious. Their actions started with suspending broadcasts of the Rockets games, while other sponsors suspended relationships with the Rockets. And if you guys don't know, sponsorships is a huge way of making money in the NBA. So the Rockets couldn't lose those sponsorships. And because of that, the Rockets owner had to rebuke the comment that the general manager made on Twitter. And their star player at the time, James Harden, which, to give you guys a little background, usually star players wouldn't have to make a statement like this, but this was a very big deal because China was holding on the leverage, because around this time, 2013-14, the NBA was really trying to grow the game, and they were seeing big growth in China. So they really was trying to lean into that and really drive the growth of the sport over there. And they wanted them to see that even the star player for the team, James Harden, apologized for what the general manager tweeted. And then for a cherry on top, the NBA, the league itself, released a statement in Mandarin expressing their disappointment in what the general manager said. I'm also really into movies. So I started to look and see if there were censorship that affect Hollywood, and I found some. For instance, Christopher Nolan's the movie called The Dark Knight, is a film, has a Chinese character portrayed very poorly in the film, and it's not even approved in China to be able to watch. The next movie I have is Joseph Koenig's Top Gun Maverick, which, if any of you guys don't know, it is the sequel for the original movie Top Gun. In this sequel, which is backed by a Chinese firm, they had to take out the Japanese and Taiwan flag, which was located on Tom Cruise's jacket during the movie. They wanted the Taiwan flag out because China doesn't see Taiwan as an independent nation, and they wanted to be safe with Japan because of everything that's been going on. So those are two kind of not negative ways, but how they took things out. But then I thought it'd be good to incorporate something that was censored, like China, in a good way. And a good example of that would be Michael Bay's Transformers: Age of Extinction. And I thought this was a good example because during this movie, the Chinese character in the film was portrayed as very selfless and very outgoing and had a very positive look. And it really helped the movie worldwide because overall the box office was $1 billion. Then thinking of the United States and how censorship's kind of related, we kind of have an amendment which talks about that pretty much. So that's why I thought it'd be important to include the United States First Amendment, which states Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise therefore, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. After looking at the First Amendment, I was thinking about if there's any scenarios where the US self-censored themselves. And I was able to find two pretty good examples. The first one is the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi during the Winter Olympics told the American athletes like not to say anything or do anything that could get them in trouble when they go over to China to compete in the Winter Olympics because they can't do anything about it. And then former Disney CEO Bob Iger, which is right here, once was quoted saying, "You try in the process not to compromise what I'll call values, but there are compromises that companies have to make to be global." And I thought this quote just really showed how big corporations can be self-centered. For instance, Disney has so many movies in the top 10 in the box office all time. For instance, the newest Avenger movie, Avengers Endgame, Avatar, even Pirates of the Caribbean's up there for them, some of the Star Wars movies. All of those movies really depend on the worldwide box office, which, for instance, like I said previously in the last slide, Hollywood has to make sure they can get those worldwide box offices by making sure they don't say anything negative or show a negative representation of China, which I thought was really fascinating. Then lastly, I thought it'd be interesting to kind of tie in like something that's really going on right now in the US, which is Elon Musk buying Twitter. On April 25th, Elon Musk agreed with the board of Twitter to acquire the app for $44 billion. When I first saw that, I'm like, wow, I can't believe you can buy something for an app for $44 billion, which came down to he technically bought the company for $54.20 per share in cash. And the main reason he bought Twitter was because he didn't think Twitter was really showing freedom of speech right. He thought that they were censoring it and it wasn't a fair representation of our very First Amendment, like I said previously in my presentation. Obviously, since this is so fresh, it's still ongoing, but as we get further along through this, we'll see what Elon Musk's plan is to help bring back the freedom of speech that he believes that was lost in Twitter. So that wraps up my presentation. I want to thank you guys for listening to me today. And this really opened my eyes about censorship that can still be seen in East China today and how us as Americans can kind of self-censor ourselves. For instance, I can't believe how much just a little flag on a jacket can do something for a movie. And they saw that, they're like, that has to be gone, or we're going to not finance this movie. But I just thought that was fascinating. And I want to thank you guys for listening and have a good one.